Right friends, welcome back to News Analysis and Features. We are going to discuss the most important aspect, and this will be in two parts. One part will be for week number 49 and the second part will be for week number 50, that is about an insight into climate change conference, that is the COP21. COP means Conference of the Parties 21 at Paris. So, the first part we are going to discuss this week and second part will be next week, and in the first part we are going to discuss or deliberate about what exactly the need for having this conference, why there is a need for such type of conferences. Right, before going into this, let us look at the scenario before 1750. Why I have taken 1750 is prior to 1750 was considered as a pre-industrialized era. Subsequent to 1750, industrialization started, though on lesser scale, because the invention of a steam engine and subsequent developments took place in the second half of the 18th century, that means subsequent to 1750. Prior to 1750, you can say it was the pre-industrialized society. The main features of a pre-industrialized society, please look into this picture. People used to have primitive life, and at the same time bullock carts, horse-drawn carriages, these were the order of the day in those days. And subsequent to 1750, that means after 1750 and to much larger extent after 1800, industrialization took place. The origin for industrialization is the invention of a steam engine, and subsequently the burning of coal started on massive scale, and first industrialization was done in European countries, followed by America, then Russia, then in recent times China. Like that it spread almost across the world, but of course some of the countries are yet to develop, but it spread to several countries across the world. And because of this industrialization, what happened? Burning of fossil fuels took place. And please look into these pictures. This is a coal-based power plant. Coal-based power plant means lot of coal is being burnt, because of which carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere. These are the developments subsequent to 1800, and during 1900s, or you can say during the second half of 20th century, the industrialization phase spread to several countries across the world, and it led to lot of vehicular emissions by burning of petroleum products. So, by burning of fossil fuels, you may ask a pertinent question, what is fossil fuel? Fossil fuel is the fuel which is generated because of a burying of animal and plant remains for millions of years below the ground. And this energy what we are using today is the fossil fuel energy, and coal and oil are examples of fossil fuels. And nowadays reckless burning of coal is going on in power plants, and reckless day-to-day burning of this petroleum products in the form of diesel, petrol is going on in large number of vehicles across the world, and this led to this carbon dioxide emissions into the atmosphere, right? So, lot of emissions into the atmosphere, and if you look at the carbon dioxide levels prior to 1750, we have noted that 1750 is the base which we have divided as pre-industrial level and post-industrial level. If you look at the 1750, the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was around 280 to 290 parts per million, popularly known as ppm. So, carbon dioxide content prior to 1750 was around 280 to 290 parts per million, but if you look at 2015, it is close to 400 parts per million. At present, the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is around 400 parts per million, and it has not increased for almost thousands of years, but the increase took place subsequent to 1800 because of industrialization. So, 40% increase in carbon dioxide took place because of burning of fossil fuels. If you look into this, you can easily understand how the carbon dioxide emissions increased after 1840 or 1850. there is a swift increase after 1945 because several countries are into industrialization phase subsequent to 1950, subsequent to Second World War, you can say, right? So if you look into these greenhouse gases, before going into greenhouse gases, what is meant by greenhouse effect? We have just now learnt because of burning of fossil fuels, the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere have gone from around 280 to around 400 parts per million, and because of increase of this carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, what will happen? The basic problem is we are getting solar energy from sun, and part of this energy is absorbed by the atmosphere and part of it is sent back, reflected back, and part of it is absorbed by the earth. And once earth absorbs it, again it is re-emitted. The absorbed solar energy is again re-emitted into the atmosphere in the form of infrared radiation. That means with more wavelength or less frequency radiation, that is infrared radiation. So this infrared radiation is catched by these greenhouse gases. So these greenhouse gases, especially carbon dioxide, and other gases are also there. We are going to deliberate it in a few moments, and these greenhouse gases absorb this re-emitted radiation from earth, which is in the form of infrared radiation, and subsequently it is spread in different directions, which results in increase of temperature, right? So the ultimate thing is to reduce carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. You may ask a pertinent question that whether it is only carbon dioxide or any other gas is there which can be termed as greenhouse gas. The most important is water vapor, but water vapor is not uniform across the world, and it is not uniform across 365 days of the year. That's why we are not discussing water vapor. But if someone asks which is the gas which absorbs more this re-emitted radiation from earth, that is water vapor, but we are not considering it because it is not constant throughout 365 days, and also throughout the world it is not constant, right? Please look into this slide. Main human activities which are responsible for greenhouse gases. If you look at it, carbon dioxide is predominant, and in carbon dioxide, you can see in this slide, 57% is because of fossil fuel burning. Because of burning of these petroleum products and coal, 57% is emitted into the atmosphere, 17% is due to deforestation. Forests absorb carbon dioxide, but we are spoiling forests, because of which the carbon dioxide levels are increasing. So if you add these two, it comes to around 74%. So predominantly carbon dioxide is increased in the atmosphere because of fossil fuel usage like coal and petroleum, and the second one is deforestation. The second most important one is methane. That constitutes around 14%, that is due to agricultural activities, waste management and energy use. Third one is nitrous oxide, which constitutes around 8%. It is due to the excessive use of fertilizers. But as carbon dioxide is predominant and constitutes 74% of the greenhouse gases, we talk about only carbon dioxide equivalent always. We are not talking about methane or nitrous oxide, but we only concentrate on carbon dioxide equivalent because carbon dioxide is predominant, right? So with the increase of this greenhouse gases, what will happen? Temperatures will increase. We have already noted carbon dioxide levels increased from around 280 to 400. We are ignoring other greenhouse gases because predominant portion is carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide levels increased from 280 to 400 parts per million, because of which there is already rise in global temperature. And if you look at the pre-industrial period temperature, it was 13.7 degrees centigrade. Proper records are available during the period 1850 to 1900. Based on proper records, because not much industrialization took place till 1850 or so. So, based on proper records available, the average global temperature was 13.7 degrees centigrade. and some newspapers reported around 14 degrees centigrade. Don't go sacrosanct by the figures, but try to understand the concept. This 13.7 degrees centigrade was the global average temperature if you look at pre-industrialized period, but this average temperature was arrived at based on the reliable available figures between 1850 to 1900, please don't forget. But if you look at the average temperature as on date, it is 13.7 degrees centigrade plus 0.8. And some people quote that it's already reached 1 degree above 13.7. Some news reports say that it already reached 1 degree centigrade above 13.7. Right? So, the ultimate goal is by 2100, the global temperatures should not exceed 13.7 plus 2 degrees centigrade. We are talking about average global temperatures. The average global temperatures by 2100 should not exceed 13.7 plus 2 degrees centigrade. That means the global temperature rise should be restricted to 2 degrees centigrade when we compare it to pre-industrial levels, and if possible to limit it to 1.5 degrees centigrade rise. And why there is need for reducing this temperature? You may ask a pertinent question. First thing is greenhouse gases are increasing, it is undoubtedly true because carbon dioxide increased by 40%. Second is it is leading to increase in temperatures because of the reasons I have already told you, because carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases traps the re-emitted radiation from Earth. This is the second point, and at present already the temperatures increased by around 0.8 degrees to 1 degree centigrade in comparison to pre-industrial levels. But what is the need for reducing this temperature rise to 2 degrees centigrade, preferably to 1.5 degrees centigrade when we compare it to pre-industrial levels? The basic reason is to prevent the melting of ice glaciers. Ice glaciers started melting and there is a disappearance of several glaciers because of global warming. And please don't forget, global warming is primarily due to rise in greenhouse gases, and predominant of greenhouse gases is carbon dioxide. If ice glaciers melts, what will happen? Sea levels will rise, and please look into this slide. The regions earmarked with the red are the regions which will be affected if a sea rises abnormally. Coastal life will be affected, several families will be affected, and because of which the entire ecosystem will be destroyed. And because of the rise in sea levels, you see Pacific island nations like Vanuatu, Tuvalu and Kiribati will be affected, and experts point out that these islands may be required to be evacuated. There is every possibility by the year 2100 some of these islands may be submerged. Please look into these Pacific islands, that is Vanuatu, Kiribati, Tuvalu, these type of islands may be submerged. And third important point is, because of ecological imbalance, because of rise in temperatures, hurricanes may become the regular feature. The fourth important point is floods and droughts may become regular feature, which we are already facing because Chennai recorded 490 millimeters of rainfall. The suburb of Chennai, Thambaram, recorded 490 millimeters of rainfall in just 24 hours. And part of the reason may be El Nino, I am not going into that. So, these are the things which may happen, and if you look at the present scenario, 2015 will be the hottest year since 1880. I have already told you reliable records are available for the period 1850 to 1900, and 2015 will be the hottest year, and 2014 already recorded as the hottest year, and 2015 will overtake 2014. Please look into these figures, startling figures. Coal contributes to 41% of world's electricity and 29% of the world's total energy produced. And I have already told you carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere increased by 40% in comparison to pre-industrial levels. And between 1970 and 2000, sea level raised by 18 centimeters. And 400 years ago, forests occupied 66% of total land mass, and now they are even less than 30%. If forests are there, what will happen? It will act as a natural carbon sink. Whatever we are producing carbon dioxide, that will be absorbed, but the forests we are destroying, because of which what will happen, the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere will further increase. So what is the solution? The solution is reduce the burning of fossil fuels like coal and oil and develop cost-effective solar, wind and other renewable energies. That is the solution. And keeping this in mind, in the year 1988, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was formulated. Keeping the gravity of the situation, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was formulated in the year 1988 by United Nations Environment Program as well as World Meteorological Organization, and it is the accepted authority on climate change. It publishes reports on climate change which are acceptable to the scientists and the governments. And this IPCC was constituted for the first time in 1988. This is intergovernmental body, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. For its efforts, it was co-awarded the Nobel Prize probably in the year 2007. And subsequently, in the year 1992, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change was devised. United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change was devised in the year 1992, and first Earth Summit was held at Rio de Janeiro in the year 1992, and with a view to reduce or with a view to limit the global temperature increases, this was devised, and then itself it was advocated that CBDR should be the bedrock of the negotiations. You may ask, what is CBDR? CBDR is common but differentiated responsibilities, because in the world there are developed countries who are burning coal and oil like anything, and some are underdeveloped countries. So the goal should be common, but the responsibility should be different. Developed countries should act more and developing countries should also do their bit, but on different platform. That is the meaning of common but differentiated responsibilities. And at present there are 196 parties to the convention, and the first conference of the parties under this United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change was held in Berlin in the year 1995, and this year's Paris conference is 21st. And you are hearing two names, COP21, CMP11. COP21 is very clear that it is 21st yearly session of the Conference of the Parties to United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. As I have already told you, the first conference took place in the year 1995 in Berlin. This CMP11 is one Kyoto Protocol. Kyoto Protocol is basically the agreement for industrialized countries to reduce carbon emissions. That was devised in 1997, and management of parties to Kyoto Protocol, you can say meeting of the parties to Kyoto Protocol, was first time held in 2005, and subsequently this is 11th one. So that's why it is also called CMP11. Let me tell you once again, Kyoto Protocol was devised in the year 1997 as part of third conference of the parties, and subsequently in the year 2005, for the first time, the parties met to discuss the framework of Kyoto Protocol in the year 2005. So from then onwards, it is numbered as CMP 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. This year it is the CMP 11. That's why this conference is called COP21 and CMP 11. Right? And important milestones if you ask. The first conference under United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change took place in Berlin in the year 1995. And other important milestone is in the year 1997, each developed country was allotted carbon emission reduction targets. Only industrialized countries were awarded carbon emission reduction targets in the year 1997, popularly known as Kyoto Protocol, but it is failure. The Kyoto Protocol was implemented from 2005, but it is failure. And at Bali conference, that is COP13 at 2007, new plan to replace the Kyoto Protocol was devised. And if you look at the Cancun conference, Cancun is in Mexico, at the Cancun conference, that is COP16 in the year 2010, rich countries agreed to help poorer nations with establishment of a Green Climate Fund, that is a GCF. So at the Cancun conference, it was decided that developed countries will help developing countries or poorer countries with green climate fund, and green climate fund is supposed to be $100 billion from the year 2020 per annum. And this year's conference is 21st, and this year's conference, a binding agreement of all the nations is planned, right? So let us conclude here, and what happened at Paris we will discuss in part 2, that along with the 50th week current affairs. So this part 2 will be next week for news analysis and features of 50th week. Right friends, have a nice day. Thank you.